Welcome to the debate. Today we're looking at a really difficult exchange. It's between someone trying to get their money back and the individual they identify as the scammer, Ghazala. Now, Ghazala's responses are just filled with these claims of personal crisis. So the question we're wrestling with is this. Is her very detailed use of extreme personal hardship, a tactical, calculated defense just to avoid accountability? Or do these claims actually reflect genuine distress that she's, manipulating? I'm going to argue these claims are primarily strategic.
And I'm coming at it slightly differently. I think the sheer specificity of it all suggests we might be looking at genuine, quite desperate circumstances that are absolutely being weaponized. A real crisis being leveraged essentially for delay and maybe even some emotional blackmail.
Right. And Ghazala's strategy, I think, is pretty clear. When the victim pushes for the financial facts, for the details, she just seems to execute this strategic collapse. She offers these, relatively specific but unverified claims like being out of Birmingham or staying at a hostel. And she blames the banks, saying they messed me up totally. Now, these aren't really explanations for the debt, are they? They seem designed to generate immediate moral paralysis in the victim. It's a carefully built narrative of vulnerability, and I believe it's deployed only to shift focus away from repayment and onto her personal crisis, just to buy more time.
Okay. While I definitely understand that suspicion, calling these specific crises purely calculated fiction, I think might miss something important. The details she gives, like the hostel, the daughter being with family, working down by Southampton, it paints a picture of a life genuinely in geographical and likely financial freefall. These excuses work precisely because they feel grounded in something that could be an authentic, desperate situation. And then she adds these religious oaths like a lucky Qassam, sis, I have nothing at moment. That suggests to me a real breakdown, which she is, yes, expertly manipulating, but it stems from something real.
But look at the pattern of evasion. That's key here. The victim asks a very direct question about the core financial issue, who you started the investment with and how it stopped. Ghazala just doesn't answer it. Instead, she pivots straight to emotion. Allah Mafi, after all this headache, I just want it all over and done with. So the personal details aren't just like a smokescreen. They actively create this moral paralysis. They make digging into the finances feel like you're being cruel. They are deployed, I maintain, specifically to avoid technical accountability for this supposed property investment.
Okay, I grant you the distraction element is powerful, absolutely. But we still have to ask, why this particular distraction? When she says, quite briefly, the trust issue comes into it. Well, that's not an explanation, is it? It feels more like a defensive wall going up. By bringing up trust, she sort of dismisses the need for any technical answers. She's essentially rebranding the investment failure as an emotional problem, maybe one she genuinely cannot explain or perhaps even fears to articulate because of her actual collapsed situation.
That really just reinforces my point, though. She's effectively handing the victim a new moral burden to carry. And her immediate plea for secrecy, please, I don't want this getting out. That doesn't sound like shame to me. It sounds like control. She uses this highly sensitive information, the daughter, the hostel situation, to humanize herself, right? To make the victim feel responsible morally for protecting her secrets. And what does that do? It weakens the victim's resolve to actually pursue the debt aggressively.
But hang on. That request for confidentiality also fits perfectly with someone who is facing extreme real-world danger. If those details are true, the hostel, her daughter's living arrangement, and they get out, she could face immediate consequences far more severe than the debt itself. Potential homelessness or maybe jeopardizing whatever care arrangement her daughter has. It just underscores the desperate, high-stakes reality her current life might actually be in, and that lends significant weight, I think, to the idea that her lack of funds is tied to these awful, perhaps verifiable circumstances she's desperately trying to keep hidden.
I still come back to the communication pattern. It shows this meticulous, almost reactive management of information. Ghazala strategically deploys these catastrophic personal details only when the victim really pushes for the money or for some kind of clarification. This calculated pattern, for me, strongly supports the conclusion that these claims function primarily as a finely tuned tactical defense mechanism. It's almost like extortion via empathy.
Look, we're completely agree that the behavior is manipulative, no question there. However, the sheer density of these specific, very vulnerable claims, from the hostile details to her daughter's situation, strongly suggests that Ghazala is pulling from a well of authentic life crisis to build the most effective, sympathetic excuse she possibly can. Ultimately, I think this exchange really illuminates the chilling effectiveness of weaponizing genuine hardship when caught in a financial conflict.